Hello and welcome back to World Talks, coming to you live from Warsaw. I'm Sara Bojarczuk. As Germany carried out the deportations of 81 Afghans to Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, Interior Minister Alexander Dobrindt called for a tougher and stricter EU immigration system. Germany recently hosted interior ministers from across Europe to address one of the region's most pressing challenges, asylum and migration. To discuss this further, I'm joined today by Sara Bojarczuk, Assistant Professor at the Center of Migration Research, University of Warsaw. Good morning and welcome. Delighted to have you with us. So, how did Friedrich Merz justify this deportation of 81 Afghans when there's no diplomatic recognition of the Taliban rule?
I believe this just followed the overall, attitudes in Europe, and that was kind of a political marking, I believe, in a way to show that, yes, we are in Europe, we are at the stage where we can pursue tougher migration policy and asylum policy. We would like to show we are more in control. We have more enforcement over asylum seekers, and therefore this is to show and stamp to show the current policy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this meeting last night in Zugspitze, what are some of the key takeaways?
The main thing is what follows Migration Pact, so tougher asylum controls and more prone and more prompt deportation. What I really like is finally addressing the way to tackle smugglers and addressing the sort of criminal part of asylum and migration. Also, I believe that another one was to enforce and strengthen the cooperation on external European borders.
Mm-hmm. So how are they going to deal with these smugglers?
This is a very good question. I'm not sure. They showed the purpose of it. However, it's quite difficult to enforce. But I believe what's key is to start tackling this, because for now the policy tackles people and asylum seekers, and they are the ones who bear the burden of the criminal activities, whereas those who smuggle people are still uncatchable and untraceable. And so I believe this is the turn that should be taken. And so the smugglers should be caught, mm-hmm. Sounds very idealistic, but this is the part of policy that should have been addressed first and foremost.
By all means. So what about these asylum processing centers that are sort of offshore?
Well, they are supposed to be the places where people who are caught across the border that are undocumented, and I would like to emphasize undocumented, not illegal. These are the places where those people can stay and wait until their asylum application is processed. I would like to see more prompt procedure, and I think this is also one of the things that should be addressed in this document, that asylum procedures are going to be much faster in terms of processing, because for now places like this are overcramped and people stay there for years or months without really knowing where their life is heading to.
Mm-hmm. Right, but I mean, isn't this sort of a Rwanda-style approach? I mean, what are some of the ethical considerations here?
Well, one of the main principles one of the things that they discussed on the meeting yesterday was to reach or to get in touch with more countries to have this better deportation procedure. So to recruit, in a way, new non-EU countries to have places to send the asylum seekers to. However, the ethical concerns are quite simple. So if someone comes throughout the country, different countries, then they should be, as a human being, they should be granted a place to stay. They should be granted a safe place to stay, because I think the main concern is the safety, because it's not a problem for a country to say, okay, we will take on X number of asylum seekers, but what's next? We'll take them, and if there is no infrastructure to reintegrate them, to allow them to settle in whatever country, then that's absolutely pointless, because those people will continue their route to Europe or to other countries, to other states. Another thing is also the safety concern. Not all the countries that are safe in the eyes of Europe are safe. And also, if it's a country, Europe now is pushing to recruit the countries that will accept asylum seekers, even though they don't have any networks. So if imagine anyone who will be taken to the country that is completely foreign with no networks. How is that going to work?
Right, so what countries are on the list as of now?
At the moment, I think there are quite a few, but I'm not sure exactly what is the list. So I think we'll see what follows with the Migration Pact.
Absolutely, because some of these countries, what I was trying to say, could be quite difficult to cooperate with, right? We all remember
Indeed.
when the EU had tried to have this arrangement with Tunisia, for instance, right, to limit the inflow and that didn't work out really.
It didn't work out because of the internal conflicts, because of also a lot of ethnic conflicts within that. I work a lot with the African states, and that one also is a problem because Europe pushes for bilateral agreements with different African countries, but the countries don't have infrastructure to help their own citizens who come back to the country, not even mentioning completely foreign, without any language, without any knowledge of the country. So I guess it's very much one-sided process because it's all for the good of European Union, but I believe the shared responsibility lies also in the fact that if we send people back to wherever we choose, there should be some cooperation how to make sure that those people stay there and don't come back.
Right, and I guess it's safe to say that some of these countries are not the most reliable partners. Indeed. Right? So let's go back to Europe. So how does this change in migration policy, in attitude towards migration, how does it influence relations between the EU states?
We can see it's becoming very much more tense. Introduction of internal borders between Poland and Germany, or Poland and southern borders as well. That is a very much sign that the Schengen zone is going through crisis. Also strengthening other borders. This is also to show that actually there is something wrong. There is tension between member states, in particular Polish-German case, which is quite prompt at the moment. So yeah, I think there's that whole notion of, we're becoming more strict, more concerned about security, because I think what's important is to show that the whole discourse and narrative around migration is not, hey, we need migrants because our economy is shrinking, we are getting older, we need people to work. It's all about they are a danger, it's a case of security. So I think this whole discourse, the negative discourse around it, also affects not only the relationship between countries, but also within the country, like in Poland.
Absolutely. So the German Interior Minister is coming to Poland on Monday. He's going to visit the Polish-Belarusian border, which is also an external border of the EU. So what are we expecting from this visit? Well,
apart from presenting our border, which I guess is also questionable, but this is something that should be discussed. I think the main talk will be what is happening between Polish and German border, and there are some discrepancies in terms of the number of migrants, the conditions under which they're being returned. So my guess, this is something that should and will be addressed, but also wider cooperation in terms of those tougher European measures.
Mm-hmm. So as a representative of an academic community, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the discussions in the academic circles? What would need to happen in order to improve this situation around migration in Europe?
I don't think we have a solution like this, even though we're an academic circle, and I don't think we are able to influence it that much. But certainly what we would advocate is more humane approach, and the fact that no human is illegal human. And I know it's not very popular politically, but I think after all we have to remember that no matter who crosses the border, they are human after all, and there should be procedures to check their past, to ensure that they are safe for the country and in the country, but after all, they are all humans.
Mm-hmm. And you've also mentioned internal tensions within these particular countries, including Poland. So do you think there's a way to address that?
Well, over the past couple of years, migration became quite politicized in Poland. And especially in recent years, and the recent election, it was one of the main topics of the political campaign. What we see now is quite quickly the attitudes are radicalized, and those sort of more radical and right-wing approaches become more prominent. I think the example of the protests this weekend are quite a good example to show that actually that narrative of threat and threat to security is being quite prominent. And I think this is something that should be distinguished between, we talk about those who, or immigrants or asylum seekers, because then there is a certain picture attached to them, because we don't talk about asylum seekers or immigrants in a way that we show a man in a suit. We show a particular person coming from a particular part of the world, having particular facial expression and being attached to a certain religion. But we don't show the positives. And I think, I'm not saying there is no there are only negatives or there is no negatives, but I think this should be balanced.
And what kind of data do we have to support this positive aspect?
Well, for sure, we have the data to support the contribution of, for instance, Ukrainian migrants to Poland. They have slightly higher participation rate in the employment market than Poles themselves have. They contributed about 15 million złotych last year, which is quite significant to the budget. They're also more likely to contribute than to take from the budget in a way of the social welfare support. And they are the one who actually kind of saved our economy at the time, but so are other nationals that keep our economy going, because in the current economic situations that Poland is, and the demographic crisis that we have, we are not able to sustain our economic growth without migrants, but nobody says that.
I mean, it has been, you know, sort of one of the arguments, right? But on the other hand, we have this cultural integration that is an issue, right? I mean, an argument that is often used by right-wing politicians. But I also wanted to ask you about Poland itself, right? I mean, since we stepped up efforts to limit irregular migration coming into the country, can we see results of that already, you know, of these sort of increased border checks and other policies?
That has never been a big phenomenon. So we talk about, you know, really small numbers. We do see returns or maybe kind of pushbacks at Polish and Belarusian borders. We see reports from Polish and German border. But I think in terms of Poland, the biggest irregular movement was at the time when we had the number of visas issued to foreign nationals that were part of the visa scandal. So I guess this is the one that was the most, numerous case of visa permits issued, not right now.
Mm-hmm. Sara Bojarczuk, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
For shedding more light on this really, really complex issue. And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.